Chapter 2. How will the universe end? Does the universe have a goal or purpose? Religious attitudes about the end of the universe. Few who have seen it can ever forget the ending of Richard Wagner's Ring, as Valhalla, the home of the gods, is consumed by fire, and the cursed ring of power achieved through the renunciation of love returns to the waters of the Rhine. The gods die, but the soaring music of the orchestra carries a hint of a purer world to come, without the duplicity of the gods. Wagner used Viking and Teutonic myths in writing his epic music drama, and many of these myths are codified in the Norse poetic Edda, perhaps written down in the late 13th century, and the prose Edda, collected by Snorri Sturluson a little earlier. They speak of the end of the world, or at least of the world we know. Ragnarok is the doom of the gods, and the destruction of the world in a last final battle between the gods and the frost giants, both of whom had arisen from the primal conflict of ice and fire in Ginnungagap, the yawning emptiness at the world's beginning. Fenrir, the grey wolf who is watching the abode of the gods, swallows sun and moon and kills Odin, king of the gods. Jormungand, the world serpent, bursts from the sea and destroys Thor, god of thunder. Hell arises with the pale armies of the unworthy dead and battles with the heroes of Valhalla on the Vigrid plain. Surt, the fire god identified with Loki, father of the wolf-age monsters, sets the 9 worlds ablaze, and the earth finally sinks into the primal ocean of chaos. This Nordic vision of the end of time is about as far from a dream of gradual progress toward utopia as you can get. The world is born in conflict, and the earth is formed from the corpse of the murdered frost giant Ymir. Viking warriors hope to gain Valhalla after death, where they fight all day and feast all night. The alternative is the pale underworld ruled by Hel, half woman and half decomposing corpse. The world will end in conflict when gods and frost giants mutually exterminate one another, and fire and water destroy the earth. All this belongs to Norse mythology, to a religious view that has long since passed away. Or has it? There are remarkable echoes of the Sumerian mythology that passed into the Christian Bible, and when the northern peoples accepted Christianity in the 10th century, they forged an unexpected alliance of their harsh warrior code with the Christian gospel. In Christianity, too, there is talk of a cosmic battle between good and evil, and a decisive battle at Armageddon that will bring the earth to ruin. But in the Christian scheme, the world was created by a basically good God, not out of a conflict between ice and fire. So, good triumphs in the end, and Armageddon is followed by the reign of Christ in glory, and by the creation of a new heaven and earth, the descent from heaven of the holy city of Jerusalem, and a world without tears or suffering. Possibly influenced by this, versions of the Norse myth speak of Balder, the gentle and wounded god, who after the destruction of Valhalla and earth will rise from the domain of Hel into a green land risen from the sea. There may be a new race of humans there, and gods more benign, and a fair land free from the ancient conflict of fire and ice. There may be an ultimate hope, but the outlook is depressing for most people. The Vikings reacted by adopting an attitude of tragic heroism, fighting to the end a battle that could not be won. Christians originally retreated from the world, the Vale of Tears, to await the world's end and the return of the Messiah. But there are strands in Norse mythology that entered into Christianity, and there are more obviously strands in Islam that call for heroic participation in the great battle of good and evil, a battle that will only end with the destruction of the old order and a dramatic new creation. The Indian traditions are hardly more optimistic. The world passes through 4 great ages, or yugas, each one lasting many hundreds of thousands of years. The first age, the age of gold, lasts longest, and in it all are happy and good. Succeeding ages grow shorter and get worse. We live in the 4th age, the Kali Yuga, in which ignorance and evil grow even greater. It will go on getting worse until Kalkin, the 10th avatar of Vishnu, rides out on a white horse to put an end to evil and to usher in the twilight sleep of Brahma, when all is quiescent and nothing lives. Then the cycle begins again, and it will be repeated endlessly. Only in China, among the great traditions, is there a fairly optimistic view of the future. In Confucian thought, humans are basically good, and if society is ruled in accordance with the way of heaven, it is possible to have a just and flourishing human world. However, the danger of imbalance and chaos is never far away, as the checkered history of Chinese dynasties shows. So, the good life is precarious and probably rare, unless there is a form of immortality with the ancestors that is beyond decay and conflict. But such hopes, though present, are muted in East Asian religions, and have never had the prominence they often have in the other main religious traditions. In this respect, the Chinese attitude is not unlike that of early Hebrew religion, represented in most of the Hebrew Bible, or Old Testament. There is little concern with a life after death or a distant future, but there is a hope for the continuance of one's family lineage and for a happy and prosperous society. Religions do not in general have as much interest in the end of the universe as in its beginning. That is probably because they consider that things, once begun, will continue very much as they are. They do have an interest, however, in the question of whether there is a purpose or goal in human existence. Religions have a strong awareness of the suffering and evil in human existence, and are largely concerned with identifying the causes of such suffering and with ways to avoid or alleviate it. A major goal of religious life is, therefore, to find liberation from suffering and evil and to find lasting happiness and true goodness. In theistic religions, the universe exists for a purpose, and it seems likely that purpose would include the happiness and virtue of conscious beings. At some time, that purpose will be realized, and evil will be eliminated, whether in the future or in another form of existence beyond this physical universe, perhaps in a new creation. This allows for a final great battle between good and evil, resulting in the destruction of evil and the emergence of a new and more perfect world. In idealist and dualist religions, there is often no positive purpose for the universe, which emanates by necessity from pure consciousness. The human goal tends to lie in escape from the illusion of plurality and reunion with a one real, or, as in Jainism, in a disembodied, individual, desireless and omniscient existence. There are versions of idealism and dualism, however, that view the finite universe more positively. For them, the goal is achieving a good and happy life free from suffering, either on this earth. Nirvana is samsara. Liberated existence is identical with this suffering world when seen by the enlightened mind, free from passion, said the Buddhist sage Nagarjuna, or in a pure land beyond the physical universe. Just as the religious question about the beginning of the universe is really about the ultimate nature of existence, so the religious question about the end of the universe, when it arises, is really about the ultimate goal of existence. The religious goal is variously conceived from the realization of a divine purpose in or beyond this universe, to escape from the material universe to pure spiritual existence, or to union with the real, to achieving a good and happy life by living in accordance with spiritual principles and insights, either in or beyond this universe. Ultimate pessimism and ultimate optimism in scientific cosmology. Modern cosmology has developed a great interest in the question of the end of the universe, but the most obvious way in which it conflicts with literal interpretations of virtually all religious views is in its vastly expanded view of the size and age of the universe. The Semitic traditions tend to place humans and the Earth at the center of the universe, and allow the universe a very short time span of a few thousand years. Indian traditions have a more expansive view, but even the million-year yugas do not approach the billion-year range of modern cosmology, and even the Mahayuga, one cycle of existence of a universe, is dwarfed into relative insignificance by the scientific prospect of billions of years of cosmic time yet to come, and of billions of other galaxies and stars that seem to be forever beyond our reach. The immediate implication of modern cosmology is that humans seem to be much less important in the scheme of things than traditional religions have thought. Out of the 14,000 million years for which the universe has existed, human beings have existed only for between 5 and 10 million years. Art, literature, philosophy, and science as we know them have existed only for a few thousand years. We have had no intimations of intelligent life from anywhere beyond this one small planet. The Sun will die in 5,000 million years, making all life in our solar system impossible. It seems likely that we will exterminate ourselves long before that anyway. Humans are a tiny, lonely, momentary flicker in a vast cosmos that seems to have no purpose or direction. In accordance with the laws of thermodynamics, all the stars and galaxies in the universe will eventually cease to exist, probably leaving a cold emptiness alleviated only by the occasional drifting of positrons through its vast solitude. In this scenario of modern cosmology, if Armageddon were to come tomorrow, and the planet Earth were to end in a cataclysm of violence, that would have virtually no effect on the galaxy of which the Earth is a tiny part, much less on the 100 billion other galaxies that exist in the universe. Intelligent life would have been a peripheral accident in a cosmos whose laws are completely indifferent to whether complex carbon molecules ever come into existence, or endure for a brief instant of cosmic time, crawling about on the surface of small and isolated planets. Peter Atkins, thinking of the laws of thermodynamics, which specify that all energy in the universe must ultimately decay, writes that all change arises from an underlying collapse into chaos. Everything is driven by decay. Everything is driven by motiveless, purposeless decay. And Steven Weinberg agrees. All our experience throughout the history of science has tended toward a chilling impersonality in the laws of nature. And again, in the final laws of nature we will find no special status for life or intelligence. A fortiori, we will find no standards of value or morality. On the other hand, not all cosmologists share this gloomy vision. Freeman Dyson, Martin Rees, and Frank Tipler are among those who think that conscious, intelligent life could expand to fill the whole cosmos, and could, in a subjective sense, become immortal. Admittedly, there is no guarantee of this, but it depends on fascinating physics, most of which is quite well understood. As Freeman Dyson claimed in a 1978 paper in the prestigious journal Reviews of Modern Physics, as the universe expands and cools, lower energy quanta of energy would be needed to store and transmit information, so a virtually infinite amount of information could be processed in an objectively finite time toward the end of the life of the universe. Perhaps, and we are thinking billions of years into the future, thoughts and memories could be downloaded into magnetic fields that could exist in the darkness of interstellar space. Frank Tipler, in his 1994 work, The Physics of Immortality, supposes that the virtually infinite intelligences that might exist in the far future universe would be able to recover all information from the past, and would choose to reconstitute all living beings who had ever existed. Thus, in the creation by advanced intergalactic intelligences of replicas of past humans, we have a scientific form of the hypothesis of the resurrection of the dead. It seems conceivable that intelligent life could thus cover the cosmos. It might even find a way to download itself through black holes or space-time warps into newly created universes. In a strange way, modern physics is able to translate some religious hopes of a new creation into a possible scientific scenario. Of course, this is all fantastic, but it seems to be physically possible. And is this vision of a universe that culminates in a universal and final flourishing of intelligent life really any less plausible than the impersonal and value-free vision propounded by Atkins and Weinberg of a universe that simply decays into unconscious chaos? After all, intelligent life may not be an accident, and it may not be peripheral to the ultimate state of the universe. Atkins himself says, "Elephants have turned out to be inevitable given molecules capable of competition and reproduction. If you merely specify the elements, sooner or later there will be elephants." We may or may not think that elephants are of great significance, but the same will go for human beings, or for vast intergalactic intelligences. They are not, after all, accidental. Quite the reverse. They may be inevitable. If you think the laws of physics are absolute and universal, it will in fact be true that, given the complete set of physical laws and the initial state of the universe, nothing will be merely random or accidental. Whatever happens will inevitably happen, or, allowing for quantum fluctuations, at least the general course of things will inevitably go as it does. So it could be the case that the universe will inevitably generate vast cosmic intelligences, and maybe in the end one vast cosmic intelligence that is virtually omniscient and omnipresent. In that case, intelligence will be far from peripheral to the universe. It will be the final, all-encompassing state of the universe and its inevitable consequence. Such an intelligence may then have the power to create new universes in the laboratory of intergalactic space or in the crucibles of black holes. God may be the inevitable end point of this universe, and God may, in turn, be the intelligent creator of new universes, which strongly suggests that a God, the product of some previous, now extinct universe, might have created this one as well. Once we have got to the stage of postulating intelligences that can decant thoughts, memories, and intentions from one universe to another, we seem to have moved a long way from the idea that all consciousness has to be embedded in things like human brains, confined as they are to parts of small animals on the surfaces of planets within a particular space-time. If consciousness can be contained in magnetic fields, or clouds of electrons and positrons, and if it can be transferred to a different space-time, the link to materiality becomes very tenuous. So a theist might think that much in modern cosmology actually points to a disconnection of consciousness from the forms of embodiment with which we are familiar. It points to the possibility that intelligent consciousness may actually be an inevitable and universal state of the far future universe. This may lead us to doubt whether everything is driven by purposeless decay, or whether it is quite so obvious that there is no special status for life or intelligence in the laws of nature. To some cosmologists, the universe looks as if it gives intelligent life the very special status of being the final, universal, and inevitable state of the physical universe. Is it a step too far to say that maybe this is the goal or purpose of the universe? Or, to take 2 steps while we're at it, to say that this goal is planned by a consciousness that is not embodied within this universe, or even at all. Evolution and transhumanism. There is strong disagreement among cosmologists, but it is important to stress that this is not a disagreement about the basic scientific facts, such as the age or size of the universe and its expansion from the Big Bang to a final state in which, in accordance with the laws of thermodynamics, its present ordered state will end, whether in a big collapse or, as seems more likely at present, in an infinite expansion into frozen emptiness. This universe, which at present manifests states of ordered complexity, will certainly come to an end, though it will take billions of years to do so. Disagreements are about whether intelligent life is accidental or inevitable, and whether it is a pointless byproduct of the laws of nature, or is destined to become the most important and universal feature of the evolution of the physical universe. These views involve very different predictions about the far future, but they are not experimentally testable now. Scientists could well remain agnostic about such very speculative issues. It seems that they are not decisively settled one way or another by hard science. They involve different assessments of the value and point of life, of the presence of necessity, and of something very like purpose, or at least direction, in nature. Some might find human life fairly pointless even at best, and think that billions of years of cosmic evolution is hardly worthwhile if it ends up with the unspeakable cruelties and suffering of Auschwitz and the thousands of other barbarities and trivialities of human existence. Stephen Weinberg says, "Remembrance of the Holocaust leaves me unsympathetic to attempts to justify the ways of God to man. If there is a God that has special plans for humans, then he has taken very great pains to hide his concern for us." Others, however, or even the same people at different times, find in the practice of science itself a testament to the value and importance of the search for truth and understanding and beauty. As Weinberg has also stated, there is a beauty in these laws that mirrors something that is built into the structure of the universe at a very deep level. Intellectual beauty is a great value. Appreciation of it and the search for truth, even at great personal cost, are great human goods. Science, at its best, the search for truth and beauty in the physical universe, is very far from being value-free. But is this enough to outweigh the Holocaust and the pain that humans inflict on one another through violence and war? Perhaps that is where the issue really lies. Those who hope for a continuance of intelligent life in the future universe usually think that suffering and ignorance can be eliminated, perhaps by genetic redesign, perhaps by transcending the human species altogether, and by the formation of very different and vastly improved forms of information processing systems. That is science speak for what we call memories and thoughts. In this respect, the cosmological optimists differ from almost all traditional religions and introduce a factor none of them ever envisaged. Human life is not the center of the universe, and it did not begin with a golden age that has degenerated ever since. Human life is a fairly early stage in the evolution of intelligences that will far transcend humanity. It has evolved from even simpler and more barbaric forms, and the progress of science and technology will enable it to evolve beyond recognition. The World Transhumanist Association, founded in 1998, is devoted to the development of transhumans, forms of intelligent life superior to the human. The new paradise will not be the city of Jerusalem, or a garden flowing with streams of water. It will be a virtual reality of pure knowledge and bliss, located in an intergalactic cloud far beyond the Milky Way. But what are the chances of this actually happening? Even the most optimistic transhumanist must have moments of doubt. Though he is not, I think, a transhumanist, Martin Rees has written that our remote descendants are likely to have an eternal future. Yet in the very same essay he also writes, "Extreme pessimism seems to me the only rational stance." For the technology of the 21st century, fairly small changes in climate or collisions with asteroids could destroy our species in a number of entirely feasible ways. The optimistic prediction of intelligent lives spreading throughout the cosmos turns out to be just hanging by a thin thread of possibility. It might happen, but we wouldn't want to bet on it. Possible religious goals of an evolutionary universe. Such possibilities, however small, were not even conceivable when the Bible and the Upanishads were written. Human lives were, on the whole, short, hard, and violent. The cruelties of military empires, the ever-present threat of wars, the ravages of plagues and natural disasters dashed any long-term optimism. The best hope was that military oppressors would be defeated in a final violent conflict, and that nature itself might be renewed by a divine act that eliminated all causes of suffering and disease, including the adjustment of the stomachs of lions so that they could eat grass, or the eating habits of mosquitoes so that they fed on nectar rather than blood. If that was not going to happen, then the human goal had to be sought outside the physical universe. And, in truth, there is not a huge difference between reconstructing this universe so that lions eat grass and moving humans into another universe altogether. Both views require a radical change in physical nature. But would the ultimate goal be physical at all? In religious traditions there is a continuum of possibilities that have been proposed. At one end there is the replication of the present universe so that we would exist in the same bodies that we have now and in the same sort of environment. Next to it is the view that we shall live again, but with different, better bodies, and in a more perfect environment. Further along the continuum is a view that gives up on bodies altogether, thinking they are altogether too restrictive and unsatisfactory. We shall only find a satisfactory existence when we are rid of the physical altogether and become pure spirits of intelligence and thought, without the need of material embodiment. And at the other end of the spiritual continuum is the belief that even a sense of individuality is a restriction. We shall not attain a fully worthwhile goal until our little finite selves are wholly merged with one infinite intelligence, and we realize that we are one with the self of all, or that the sense of a finite separate self is an illusion. It does not seem that the first view in this continuum of possibilities is very convincing, that a satisfying spiritual goal lies in living in this universe or one just like it, even with an enlightened eye. For any universe very like this one would still be subject to natural disaster, disease, and death. If our bodies were to be beyond physical disease and decay, the second law of thermodynamics, which ensures the decay and decomposition of all things, would have to be changed. The physical structure of Earth, the stability of which depends upon volcanic and seismic activity, would have to be changed. The digestive system of all predators would have to be changed. As Thomas Aquinas put it, we might still have intestines, but we would not need to use them. We would still have toenails and hair, but they would never grow too long. By the time we have made all the changes needed to eliminate causes of suffering and death from our world, we would find ourselves living in a very different sort of universe, whose laws were quite different from ours. So we move further along the continuum and find ourselves living in a universe like this in many ways, but with a wholly different physical substructure. This would not be a replica universe, but a different sort of universe in which lions really could lie down with lambs, and humans would not need tear ducts, since they would never cry. This transformed universe could come into existence in the far future. That would be very like the Frank Tipler hypothesis, in which humans, and maybe other animals, will be reconstructed in new forms in a virtual world by some vast intergalactic intelligence. Is this so very different from the belief that God will one day eliminate evil and suffering and create the universe anew? Not really. Except that if there is a God, a vast but disembodied intelligence who created this universe, we could virtually guarantee that God would do this, if God wanted to. Whereas there is only a small probability that Tipler's cosmic intelligence will ever actually exist. And perhaps we can only really speak of the universe as having a goal if there is an intelligence there from the beginning, a mind who planned it that way. Otherwise it is not really a goal to which the universe inevitably moves, but only a debatable outcome, which may or may not happen. If religious faith in life after death, a faith that we will live again in a better form by the grace of great intelligence, was based on the Tipler hypothesis, we would be betting on an extreme hypothesis. Of course, we may think all religious faith is extreme and poorly evidenced anyway, so not much would be lost. But, at least if there was a God, a future better life would be a much better bet, and it might, if God is truly benevolent and good, even amount to a certainty. Whether or not there is a God, I think we can see how the universe could have a goal and roughly what it would be: the existence of intelligent life with understanding, wisdom, and happiness, free of suffering, disease, and death. We can even see how the cosmic evolution of the universe up to this point could be seen as planting the seeds of such a future existence. Natural science cannot show that human life is just an accident, or that the universe is indifferent to human life, or that it is of little value anyway. Intelligent life could be built in as a natural or even inevitable outcome of the fundamental laws of the universe, and it could carry enormous potential value, at least in some future form. Religious views that place the goal of life beyond the universe. Many religious views, especially in the Indian traditions, live with the thought that the universe has no such future goal. For them, true human fulfillment lies in leaving all physical universes behind. The physical universe has had a part to play in the story of human souls. It provides a context in which desires can be explored and fulfilled, and the futility of desires can be realized. So, human life is not an accident. The universe is not indifferent to it. The universe is a necessary part of the journey of souls that have fallen into passion, ignorance, and selfish desire, and that need to rise again to the spiritual realm from which they have come. For such religious views, it does not matter much how the universe began or how it will end. Yet the universe does, in a sense, have a purpose. That purpose does not lie in its final state, but simply in the fact that it provides a place in which souls can work out their karma, the consequences of their actions in past lives, and perhaps develop toward a greater spiritual maturity that can be completed in future lives. According to these views, human life in this cosmos is only a part of a larger series of lives in other worlds. Traditionally, in Indian thought, there are 6 hells, places of even greater suffering than in this world, and 6 heavens. But there could be an infinite number of other worlds in which souls could be embodied. The end of this universe is just the end of one particular world, which will begin again anyway. It is not the final destination of any human soul, but it can be a good jumping-off point toward a more enlightened spiritual existence, whether that is union with the One Self, as in Advaita Vedanta, or entrance into nirvana, as in some forms of Buddhism, or into a pure land of wisdom and bliss, as in other forms of Buddhism, or becoming a liberated soul, as in Jainism. To many people, such an idea of many embodiments is both irrational and immoral. It is irrational because there is no evidence of past or future lives, and because souls cannot jump into different bodies. It is immoral because it makes people think that if they suffer, it is because they deserve it. They must have done great evil in past lives, so there is little incentive to relieve their suffering, which is a just judgment anyway. These objections are not insuperable. If memories and thoughts can be downloaded into different forms of neural network, as some scientists suppose, it is not a great leap from that hypothesis to the view that they can be downloaded into completely different bodies. Some people do claim to remember past lives, so there is some evidence to support the theory. Admittedly, however, the evidence is not strongly established, and the evidence that we have remains a puzzle rather than a proof. As for the moral point, we can still have compassion for those who suffer, even if they in some sense deserve it. Compassion is still an obligation, and we might be able to help others to face up to and overcome the pain they feel. We should look to the future, and to what embodied souls may become, not to the past, and what they may have been. These arguments are not likely to be definitively settled by science. They are more likely to be settled, if they can be settled at all, by trying to decide whether consciousness is a product of complex material processes or can have independent existence, whether it does look as though people's human lives seem to be appropriate in terms of what we can see of their characters, and whether a worthwhile ultimate goal of human existence is complete liberation from embodied existence. Science and close observation may be relevant to such discussions, but they will rarely be decisive, and wider considerations, our judgments about the nature of the human self, about the meaning or pattern of human life stories, and about what we hold to be ultimate values, will be very important. It can always be held that these are just subjective choices, and that, if we were really concerned about the facts, we would rely solely on what the sciences can establish. But the fact is that speculations about the end of the universe, whether pessimistic or optimistic about the existence of intelligent life, will not be very relevant for those who hold religious views that the goal of human life lies wholly beyond the universe. Scientific disputes about such topics may suggest that at least hard science cannot disprove religious beliefs on these matters. Maybe believers and unbelievers alike will have to be content with that. The self-unfolding nature of an evolutionary cosmos. The Semitic religions, which are theistic, have more interest in the question of whether the universe has a goal. They think that human lives begin with physical birth in this universe, and that the personalities we have in this life on Earth are much more central to our natures than they would be if we all had lived thousands or millions of times before in many different forms. For some Indian traditions, human bodies are like sets of clothes that we wear for a while but will then discard, and it is hoped find something better. But for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, our body is an essential part of what we are. It is not like clothes. It is more like skin. If there is an ultimate goal for such beings as us, it will have to be a more perfect form of what we now are, an embodied life of knowledge and freedom and friendship, but one without pain and suffering. A natural question that arises is, if such valuable intelligent life without suffering could exist, and if there is a God who can make it exist, why did God not simply create life in the first place as obviously valuable and intelligent? Why did God create instead the messy and dangerous, wasteful and painful process of gradual evolution toward a future, more valuable, intelligent life? One reason that can be suggested is the consideration that human life is not only properly embodied, but it is embodied in an evolutionary universe. I'm thinking primarily here not just of the Darwinian evolution of life on Earth, but of the cosmic evolution of the universe over billions of years from an initial, simple state, the Big Bang, to the complex system of galaxies and stars, planets, and incredibly organized organisms that now exist. This process of cosmic evolution was quite unknown before modern times, and yet it has an interesting resonance with some of Aristotle's ideas. Aristotle saw change as a movement from potentiality to actuality, Substances realize their potential, striving to reach a state in which that potential is fully actualized. Aristotle was not thinking of evolution. Indeed, he held that each substance has an essential nature that cannot change, even if it can be realized more or less fully. One essential nature cannot change into another. But if the whole cosmos is regarded as one substance, the development of matter into complex integrated forms can readily be seen as a realization of potentialities implicit in it from the first. The first state of the universe was too simple even to contain elementary particles, but as the universe began to cool, particles like photons or quarks formed. Then there were simple atoms of hydrogen and helium, forming large gaseous clouds that became stars. Within the nuclear furnaces of stars, heavier atoms formed and built up a range of chemical elements. Some of these formed large molecules, which came to replicate themselves and build organic bodies with primitive sense organs. Central nervous systems came to be, and brains that gave rise to consciousness, sensation, and thought. There has been a gradual development from quarks to consciousness. Each stage has been more complex and structured than the one before. The cosmic process shows increasing differentiation and the cumulative construction of complex unities. The parts of these unities interact with one another so that they have a capacity to respond to their environment in increasingly complex ways. Plants have a more complex set of responses than rocks, using and seeking out influences from the environment to grow and reproduce. Animals are more active and exploratory than plants, and humans are able to recognize their environment consciously, think about its nature, and react to it in creative ways. Humans do not seem to be a sudden, unexpected intrusion into what was previously a purely mechanical process. That was Descartes' error. Humans have a highly developed way of receiving influences from the environment and responding to them actively. But that is a natural development from much earlier, more basic and unconscious stimulus-response processes that exist in simple form even in subatomic particles. Theologians like Augustine have suggested that a creator God might act in accordance with a principle of plenitude, the principle that every sort of good that could exist should exist, as long as it does not give rise to an unacceptable level of evil. So, a creative intelligence might wish there to be stars and galaxies, objects possessing awesome beauty and intellectual interest. Even if finite consciousness never came to exist, the cosmos would have value for a God who delights in its beauty. But God might also wish there to be plants, which would blossom and flourish in the light of the stars, and animals that would act largely by instinct, but would be capable of pleasure and friendship in increasing degrees. And God might wish there to be animal intelligences that could share in the appreciation of all these kinds of beauty and goodness. Though Augustine did not think of it, all these things could develop in accordance with simple and elegant principles of differentiation and organic formation from the simplest to the most complex over millions of years, just as fertilized cells develop into babies and human beings in a much shorter time. Evolution is a very natural and familiar process. We see it in the growth of every plant from seeds, and of every adult animal from a tiny cell. On the cosmic scale, this would be a realization of the potentiality of the physical world to become fully personal and to realize a multitude of intermediate forms of developing life in the process. Would this not be a beautiful and elegant creation? Not everyone would think so. For some there is still too much suffering and wastefulness, too much randomness and accident for the process to be truly valuable, and for some, human consciousness is so pointless and unhappy that it is not worth having. But these are value judgments, not scientific judgments. At least a stress on the intricacy, beauty, and intellectual elegance of the evolutionary process is a counterbalance to presentations of evolution as nothing but a blind and ruthless struggle for survival. It is possible to think of the cosmos as manifesting the principle of plenitude as a gradual and continuous unfolding of potentialities tending toward the increase of consciousness, intelligence, creative freedom, and personal cooperation, as a whole whose parts are interconnected in subtle and highly integrated ways. Then the Aristotelian theory of forms, or essential natures, and the Aristotelian belief in final causality can be restated, so that the cosmos can be seen not as a set of changeless, fixed essences that strive to be themselves, but as one integrated process of cosmic autopoiesis, self-unfolding, that moves toward greater consciousness and self-direction. This process may possess distinctive sorts of value that could not exist in a static universe, however perfect it might be. It might even be that there is a deep necessity in the evolution of complex, intelligent life forms from simpler physical structures in accordance with basic physical laws. Such a universe, even if it is only one possibility out of many possible forms of finite existence, may nevertheless exist as a necessary expression of values, potential in the divine ground of all possibilities. There may be a necessity inherent in the divine being to realize this possibility, which may be said to be chosen for the sake of the great goods it contains, despite the destructive elements that an evolutionary universe inevitably carries with it. The goal of the far future universe. If we could accept such a picture of the cosmos, then we could see it as having a goal in the flourishing of personal consciousness. But this may be a goal, a possibility to be aimed at, not something that will inevitably exist without effort or striving. The process would then be part of the purpose. To achieve something by effort through hard self-discipline and application is a distinctive form of personal excellence. Such excellences are traditionally called virtues, and the cultivation of virtue, of intellectual and moral excellence, might be seen as one of the main goals of human life. For billions of years there would not be a conscious striving for excellence. That comes only with the genesis of rational consciousness. But there would have to be, in the long development that leads to consciousness, the laying down of physical structures that prepare the ground for such striving, and for the existence of consciousness. That means the laying down of flexible physical structures that allow for the choice of alternative futures, for both success and failure, and for a nexus that gives conscious decisions a causal role to play in the physical world. There would have to be an openness and freedom in the structure that might, for many observers, be indistinguishable from chance. Thus, an element of randomness or chance might be built into a goal-oriented universe whose goal involves the cooperation of finite intelligences generated within the universe itself. This is the core of the free process defense used by the physicist John Polkinghorne to explain how great natural evils can exist in a world created by a good God. Randomness necessarily means that the destructive possibilities of the cosmos, entailed by the basic laws of physics, will often happen by chance. They are not directly intended by anyone, much less God. But those laws and that element of randomness may be necessary to lay the foundation for the moral freedom that will later characterize intelligent life. Then, when intelligent moral agency appears on the scene, it may actually increase the evil in the world, rather than, as it should, gradually eliminate it. If the intended goal is to be achieved only by discipline and striving, then it is entirely possible that conscious beings may strive and fail, or they may just refuse to strive. As we gaze around the human world, it looks as though very few people succeed in getting anywhere near a goal of understanding, wisdom, creative freedom, and joy. Many try, but are deterred by hardship, or by the attractions of more easily obtainable pleasures. Some fail, are embittered by their failure, and actively seek to destroy such virtues wherever they are found. If we have to characterize human lives in general, we may be tempted to say that willful misunderstanding, ignorance, destructiveness, addiction, and misery are more obvious features of human beings than anything else. The outlook seems bleak. It may be that we just have to live with what we have got, and that even in this ambiguous world it is possible and desirable to cultivate dispassion and mindfulness, inner calm and joy. But that would be to renounce the idea that there is a desirable goal for the whole cosmos, and it would involve denying that there is a cosmic intelligence who has created the universe for the sake of its goodness. That is an intelligible religious view. It is the view of some forms of Buddhism, but it is not characteristic of most theistic forms of religious belief. So can the view that there is a positive and achievable goal for the universe be sustained? One possibility is the Omega hypothesis. Within Christianity, this has found its main proponent in the Jesuit paleontologist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. According to this view, the evolution of life will continue beyond the present forms of human existence and culminate in an omega point, a hyper-personal reality in which all particular consciousnesses are united. The universe is a collector and conservator of persons. The noosphere, the collective realm of thought, will reach collectively its point of convergence at the end of the world. No one has ever claimed that Teilhard's thought was clear, but it has immense poetic power, and his book, The Phenomenon of Man, earned a long and enthusiastic introduction from the biologist and humanist Julian Huxley. The key point is that present humanity will be transcended in a more unified superconsciousness, a convergent reality that will finally transcend even material embodiment and become something like pure information. At that point, the goal of ontogenesis will be achieved, and the material universe will be fully personalized, and more. In The Phenomenon of Man, Teilhard proposes two ways in which this may happen. The first is by the gradual conquest of disease and hunger, so that the final convergence will take place in peace. But the second is that evil may go on growing alongside good, and it too may attain its paroxysm at the end. Then there will be a great divide between that part of the universe that refuses unity in Omega, disintegrating with the death of the physical universe, and that part that experiences an ecstasy transcending the dimensions and the framework of the visible universe. For both views, humanity is part of a process that transcends humanity, and that seems to fit the pattern of evolutionary thinking. The typical lifetime for a complex species is about 10 million years, but astronomer Owen Gingerich puts a much lower limit on the existence of the human species. To me, he says, it is unimaginable that Homo sapiens will still exist on Earth 10 million years from now, except perhaps by some remote chance in zoos. Humans, as we know them, may become extinct. It will then be our remote descendants who will inherit the Omega point. We humans will have played our part in the cosmic process and passed away. Or, if we have no descendants, if we wipe ourselves out in the near future, then the cosmic goal may be achieved elsewhere. It is possible that the Earth is a failed experiment in striving for the cosmic goal. All life on Earth will become extinct, but on some other far-away planet, in another galaxy, far, far away, a more successful attempt is already underway, and will be the source of the seeding of the whole universe with intelligent and benevolent life that never will be, and never was, human. In any case, it seems as though the human species will not play any part in the evolutionary goal of the cosmos. The theistic hope for a new creation. Theistic religions have rarely been happy to believe that present humans will simply be eliminated, leaving the future to some superior life form. Yet early forms of Christianity especially have accepted the pessimistic view that evil cannot be eliminated from human life, which makes the achievement of an Omega point that includes humans in the future universe questionable. Some other solution that can include present human lives and yet that is not unduly optimistic about the human future seems called for. Optimistic scenarios of continuous human progress received a sharp blow when the first half of the 20th century saw more people violently exterminated in war than in the whole of the rest of human history. And those wars were conducted by the most cultured and progressive humans on the planet. It does not fill one with unqualified hope for the future. Those who believe in a cosmic intelligence, who creates the universe for the sake of its goodness, seem committed to thinking that the goal of a good society of finite persons must in the long run be achieved. It would also be natural for them to think that good will overwhelmingly outweigh any evils that have existed in the cosmic process, and that those evils will not simply be unredeemable and pointless, without any worthwhile outcomes or consequences. It is morally important that such outweighing of evil by good, and such possible redemption of evil, must be possible for every being who has suffered. One person's suffering cannot morally be outweighed by another person's flourishing. It is those who have suffered who must share in the ultimate goodness of creation. But if much terrible evil arises from the freedom of finite persons not to enter into the convergence of love, and if such freedom cannot be eliminated from human existence, then the ultimate goal will not be attainable while human life exists in its present form. It follows that the ultimate goal can only be attainable beyond this space-time. Yet, because it is a goal of beings in this space-time, it must be a credible fulfillment of potentialities that existed in this space-time. As the theologian Jürgen Moltmann says, the future, new, eternal world is therefore to be the new creation of this world we know. It is not a quite different form of existence. It is to be the recreation of this universe in a more perfect, a transfigured form. What this scenario adds to the scientific speculation of intelligent life's existing, at least virtually, forever in transhuman form, is that it is a goal for all who have ever existed, and not just for the final generation of thinking galactic clouds. As Moltmann says, this is the only model that perceives a future for what is past and expresses hope for the dead. Or, if Frank Tipler rises up and says that he can provide that too with his virtual replicants, it is worth pointing out that his prediction looks like a very improbable and always insecure future, while the God hypothesis, provided of course that there is a God, gives us an intended, assured, and perfectly just future for all. It is at this point that the phrase wishful thinking will occur to those who are skeptical about the existence of God. Is the believer not just inventing an invisible sky, in which nutritious, if spiritual, pies can be eaten because all the pies on earth proved unsatisfactory? Isn't this just the biggest piece of wish fulfillment in the history of thought? Maybe so. And yet it is a modern science that suggests that this space-time may not be the only one there is, and that even this space-time may be nothing more than the appearance of some veiled and mysterious reality that lies beyond it. If, and this is a very big if, consciousness is the basis of reality, and if the universe can plausibly be seen as the product of a great intelligence, is it not also plausible to think that there must be some point into the existence of the universe? Further, would that point not lie in the existence of valuable and worthwhile conscious states, apprehensions of truth, beauty, and goodness, in many finite personal agents? And would an intelligent creator not then ensure that such a valuable goal were actualized? It is from such considerations, rather than simply from some personal desire to go on forever, that belief arises in a world beyond this in which the goals faintly discerned and ambiguously pursued in this world could be realized. Can this universe exist in transfigured form? The Quran is typically forthright. One day the earth will be changed to a different earth, and so will be the heavens. Even as we produced the first creation, so shall we produce a new one. We are not to be frustrated from changing your forms and creating you in forms that you know not. In Christianity also there will be a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. Chaos and destruction, for which the salt-water sea is a common biblical symbol, are eliminated, and this perishable body must put on imperishability, and this mortal body must put on immortality. The new creation is imperishable, beyond the range of the laws of thermodynamics, and immortal, beyond the reach of death and decay. Yet it is this body that will exist. Humans will not be exact replicas, and they will not be totally new sorts of individuals. They will be beings who are what they are in that universe because of what in this universe they were and made of themselves. Moreover, it is not just humans who will exist in the new world. Trees, plants, animals, insects, clouds, and mountains will exist there. Everything but sea, apparently, though very big lakes may be allowed. But all is transfigured by the glory of God, to whom all things are transparent, and who permits nothing to remain in being that has not learned to love, or there is no place in a world of interwoven love. This means that what we do in and to this universe has lasting consequences for the world to come. What we create and shape will be present, though transfigured by glory. What we destroy and frustrate will fail to be present as it could and should have been. In that sense, the future world will perhaps always bear the marks of the tragic, of a failure to be what should have been, of absence where there should have been presence, of pain never quite forgotten, even though transfigured by present joy. Nevertheless, the goodness of that world will be overwhelming, and it will be the result of what took place in the ontogenesis of this world. If such things are possible, then this cosmos may have and may achieve an ultimate goal. even as it passes into the long silent darkness in which even the last star has ceased to be. 3 scientific views of the end of the universe. What, then, have science and religion to say about the end of the universe? Some scientists find in the size of the universe, the impersonality of its laws, the huge improbability of any organic life forms ever existing, and the very brief period during which such life forms have a window for existing, signs of the pointlessness and lack of purpose in the universe. The darkness between the stars dwarfs human life into insignificance. There may be beauty and mathematical structure in the cosmos, but it will end as it began, in unconscious emptiness. Other scientists take a much more optimistic view. Intelligent life may be inevitable, given the basic laws and constants of the natural world. It may spread throughout the galaxies and achieve virtual immortality. Human life will be left behind in this march toward cosmic consciousness, but life itself will expand and progress, until a reality very much like the traditional God, virtually omniscient and omnipotent, will come to be, and may, in turn, create other universes beyond this one. I think that most scientists, however, may find the first of these views more an expression of subjective tendencies toward depression than an objective assessment of the facts. And the second view, while within the realm of physical possibility, is subject to too many unknown variables and accidents to be the object of a realistic hope. For them, human life will end, but it may have a few 1,000 million years yet to go, which is not bad. The fact that its total span of existence will be short in cosmic terms does not deprive it of significance. Individual human lives grow, flourish, and celebrate many moments of value and pleasure before inevitably they die. So the life of humanity itself can flourish before it fades. The values of scientific understanding, of artistic creation, of moral heroism, and of shared friendship are worthwhile in themselves. The fact that they do not last forever makes them, if anything, more to be treasured and valued. Human life may indeed be cut short by war or natural disaster, all the more reason to seek peace and to preserve the ecosystem within which we live. Human existence is almost unimaginably rare in our universe, and it will inevitably end. But we can still seek worthwhile goals of activity now, goals that we choose and pursue while we live, as the Viking warriors of the Norse sagas fought and feasted and rejoiced, even as their world ended in the final conflagration of ice and fire. Modern religious views about the end of the universe. Most religions were originally formulated before anything was known about the size and destiny of the physical cosmos. Such knowledge necessitates a revision of all the physical data involved in religious beliefs about the end or goal of the universe, but it is characteristic of most religious beliefs that they do posit a goal or purpose for the existence of the universe. For some religions, mostly those in originally Indian traditions like Buddhism, the purpose of the universe is to be a place in which human souls can work out their own destiny, or karma. The ultimate aim of human life lies beyond the physical cosmos, perhaps in a liberated existence of pure consciousness, or perhaps in a pure land, free from suffering and pain. A variant on this general view places little or no emphasis on a continuing life beyond the cosmos and stresses the possibility of a liberated or enlightened human life in the present. Religion is about the search for enlightenment, or samadhi. That is basically a higher, blissful and concentrated state of consciousness in present life, and may have no implications for the possibility of a life after death. According to these views, the physical end of this universe, like its physical beginning, is of no particular religious relevance. What matters is that the laws of the universe allow the process of moral self-making, or unmaking, to play an important causal role in the way things go. Scientific views about the nature of causality may make that a highly debatable belief, but that is another question, and I will consider it later. Theistic traditions tend to have a greater interest in the end of the cosmos because they see the whole physical universe as the expression or manifestation of an underlying spiritual or conscious reality of supreme value, usually called God. It therefore seems plausible that there should be some reason for physical existence. This is sometimes envisaged, usually in Indian Hindu traditions, as a fall of souls into a world of desire and pleasure. But it can also be seen as the creation of new souls to form communities of personal agents and enjoyers of the beauty and goodness of created existence. Hindu cosmologies envisage infinite universes. This one will end, but will be repeated an infinite number of times. So the goal, insofar as there is one, is progression to a happier universe and return to God beyond this specific universe. Again, it does not matter much what happens to this universe as it dies, its job done. It is the Semitic traditions that most strongly imply the realization of a positive goal for the universe. God creates the universe for its goodness, and that goodness must therefore, we might well think, be realized. However, things are not very clear-cut. It could be that goodness could be realized in the emergence of societies of intelligent, virtuous and happy persons, whether on earth or throughout the whole universe. The religion of the Hebrew Scriptures seems to express such a hope for the world, though the arrival of the kingdom of God, when peace and righteousness will rule, has to be preceded by a great and terrible day of the Lord, eliminating all the oppressive and militaristic forces in the world. In the development of Jewish theological thought, the notion arose that the arrival of a final perfect society would not be enough to justify all the evil that had occurred on the way to it, especially the deaths of the martyrs and the heroes of faith. So the idea of resurrection arose, possibly influenced by Persian Zoroastrian religion, as a belief that all the dead would rise to a life that would compensate them for the evil they had suffered. Further reflection on what would be needed for a perfectly good society led, in the thought of 2nd Isaiah in the 6th century BCE, to a realization that the laws of nature themselves would have to be changed if all destruction and suffering were to be eliminated. So the idea of a new and transfigured creation arose, not just another universe than this, but this universe, or at least this earth, transformed into an incorruptible and timeless or everlasting reality. All these ideas are incorporated into the Christian book of Revelation, written under the influence of the basic belief that in Jesus the nature and purpose of God had been normatively disclosed. In a riotous array of images and dramatic narratives, Revelation foretells a cataclysmic destruction of evil as the forces of Gog and Magog, the militaristic empires of earth, destroy themselves in war. It foretells the triumph of goodness and a recompense for the suffering of the innocent victims of history, symbolized by the return of the martyrs of faith and goodness, with Christ as their king, to rule the earth for 1,000 years. Then all the dead rise to judgment, and the new Jerusalem descends from the sky to usher in a new heaven and earth, in which God will be present and clearly known by all. No one can take the book of Revelation literally. Lambs do not go about with swords in their mouths, destroying armies. Unfortunately, many have tried to make the symbols correspond to specific events and people in human history. All such attempts have yielded false predictions, and one might have thought they would have been given up by now. It is true that Babylon, the city of earthly power doomed to destruction, almost certainly referred to the Roman Empire, but it referred more widely to powers of military oppression in general, and thus to such powers in any age. The book of Revelation does not give an exact timetable for the future, which some sort of secret knowledge can enable us to decode, so that the Gnostics, the initiates of secret knowledge, can tell us exactly what is going to happen. Like the Norse myths, and like the creation stories in Genesis, Revelation gives sets of symbolic images that are meant to express spiritual truths. Truths not about what will happen in the next few years on earth, but truths about how God stands in relation to human life, and assurances that the goal of human life will be realized. The spiritual meaning is that evil will be wholly eliminated, because it is inherently self-destructive. If you kill with the sword you must be killed. Those throughout history who have given their lives for the sake of goodness will receive an overwhelming recompense. That is the meaning of first resurrection and the millennium. No one will escape judgment for what he or she has done in his or her life. Yet all will be offered a place in a new and transfigured earth, which will exist timelessly and forever. These are alternatives, each selected by different theologians. Christ will be seen as the eternal wisdom of God, who was embodied on earth in and through the person of Jesus of Nazareth. So in the end, all the good that has ever been will be gathered into the mind of God, and all the conscious creatures that have ever been will share in appropriate fashion their delight in that goodness. The relation of religious and scientific claims about the end of the universe. These truths, or claims, are embodied in a wholly pre-scientific cosmology. Earth is the center of the cosmos, and the stars are lamps hung on the dome of the sky. Earth has only existed for a few thousand years, and it will cease to exist in its present form within a generation or so. Jesus will return in glory at any moment, and the new creation will, in an instant, in the twinkling of an eye, totally change the nature of the whole universe, after the stars have fallen from the sky, and the sun, the moon, and saltwater sea have been expunged. The disparity between the biblical cosmology and modern cosmology is enough to make some people simply reject the Bible as a form of primitive ignorance, compounded by hallucinatory fantasy. The movement of creationism, arguing for the literal truth of Genesis, pales into insignificance before millenarianism, arguing for a secret interpretation of Revelation that tells the initiated literally what is going to happen soon. I think all we can say here is that millenarianism is in total conflict with scientific cosmology. If millenarianism is part of Christianity, then Christianity and modern cosmology cannot be reconciled. Millenarianism, however, has never been part of the teaching of any mainstream Christian church. It does keep popping up in the most surprising places, and it will probably never wholly die out. But most mainstream Christian churches accept the sort of spiritualized account I have offered, which agrees, for example, with the general commentary given by Richard Bauckham in the Oxford Bible Commentary. This is a matter of hermeneutics, or biblical interpretation. If it is accepted that spiritual meanings can be expressed in symbolic forms and can be distinguished from literal facts about the physical cosmos, then we can assign spiritual meaning to religion and literal meaning to cosmology. It is scientific cosmologists who have the authority to tell us what will probably happen in the far future of the universe. Religious thinkers will be concerned with the existence of God, as the supreme spiritual consciousness underlying the physical universe. Their claim is that the physical universe is not all there is, and that its end does not annihilate all there is. Yet, for theists, the universe has existed for a purpose, which is to generate many forms of goodness and many beings who can appreciate and create such forms of goodness. In the end, in a transfigured cosmos, when this cosmos has passed away, all the good this universe has produced will be realized in perfected form in God. All evil and imperfection will pass away, and finite agents can be recreated to know the good as it truly is, its causes and its consummation. For some, such a separation of spiritual meaning from literal meaning is unacceptable. There is only one real world, and we have to live with that, not invent some more tenuous and wispy world in which our fondest dreams can be realized. But religion is founded on the claim that the spiritual world is the real one. The physical world is its transient and temporary manifestation. That the universe has a purpose, and that its goal will be realized are integral parts of the hypothesis of the ontological primacy of God. Scientific cosmology cannot resolve this deep dispute, but it can give us much more and much more reliable knowledge of what the physical manifestation of a supposed spiritual world is. It can do religion a service by forcing it to consider what spiritual truths religion does seek to express, and to refrain from making unsubstantiated claims about literal facts, future or otherwise. At that point, the skeptic will reply that all the claims religions make, whether about literal or spiritual facts, are unsubstantiated. This reply is hardly surprising, since, the skeptic will say, there are no spiritual facts anyway. But now the argument is not about cosmology. It is, much more broadly, about whether there is a God or a spiritual realm of being. So will the universe end? Probably, but it does not much matter to most religions. Has the universe a goal? Science does not usually ask that question. But for many, not all, cosmologists, it may have, and if so, the goal has to do with the increase of knowledge, freedom, and intelligent life. Will the goal be realized? Not literally forever in this universe, it seems. But it may be realized for a while, or it may be realized more fully if there are universes of an appropriate sort beyond this. Perhaps, surprisingly, some strictly cosmological thought would not rule this out as a possibility. For much religious thought, the goal will be realized in another universe, which may be a transfigured form of this one. If this is to be more than a bare speculative possibility, it must be founded on a firm belief in the reality of God, or spiritual being. And that seems to be a matter that takes us beyond science, though not beyond the possibility of reasoned debate.